Okay, so this was my 7th visit to Quarter Mile Lane Elementary School. This week, I helped with a lesson, like a small group lesson. Part of this week's assignment was to teach a lesson to a small group that includes my student. So I did, and then I paid specific attention to my student and her performance in that group. Basically, what the group did, I read a book to them called The Little Rabbit Who Wanted Red Wings. Easter's this Sunday, so a lot of the stuff that they were doing was Easter related and related with bunnies and eggs. So I read that book to them, and then they drew a picture. They had like a sheet of paper that top half was blank and the bottom half had lines on it to write sentences. So after I read the book, the students drew a picture of what they wish they had. And then after that, they would write a sentence about what they drew. My student started to draw her picture, but she didn't have enough time to write anything, so her teacher said that she can finish it tomorrow. But after I read the story, I asked them comprehension questions, and she seemed to comprehend what was read to her, and she seemed to understand the book. So I thought that was good. I also finished my tutoring. I did my 3rd lesson today. My 3rd lesson was focused on sight words, and I chose 6 main sight words. I chose my, and, the, I, see, and like. I chose those because she seemed to be having a little bit of trouble with any basic word knowledge to begin with, but those 6 specifically because they come up a lot in the books that are in the classroom and the things that she needs to write. So I thought that would be a good lesson and good words to choose for this tutoring session. So I started off by saying, today we're going to practice sight words, and I showed her the 6 sight words. I made flashcards. They look like this. That's my, and then there's 5 more with each word on it. So I said, today we're going to practice sight words. I showed her the flashcards, and I said, but first I want to see what you already know. So we went through the 6 words. I showed her the 6 flashcards one at a time, and I said, if you don't know the word, that's okay. Just say pass. It actually went a lot better than I thought it would. I thought I would have to teach her most of those words, but she actually could identify all of them except and the first time around. And then we went through them again, and she had trouble not only with and, but also see. And then after we went through the flashcards, and I felt good that she knew all 6 of the sight words. I moved on to a game that's called Roll a Sight Word. So I know it's going to be backwards, but I wrote in the 6 sight words at the top, and then you rolled the dice, and if you get a 1, then she would write my. If you got a 2, then she would write and. 3, she would write the, and so on and so forth. So she would write the word, and then when she was done writing it, she would say the word. So the repetition, I feel, helped her learn each word. And then by the end of the game, I was asking her to spell each word, and she surprisingly was able to do that. At first, she would look at the paper to see, how it was spelled, and then I would cover up the paper, and I would ask her to spell the word again, and whether she said it from memory because she just said it, or if she actually knew how to spell the word, she was able to still spell out the word regardless, which I thought was great, because when I first started working with her, she couldn't even identify all the letters of the alphabet, so the fact that she can spell out her sight words is amazing. And it's very neat to see the progress that she's made over the 8 weeks that I've been there, like the 8 weeks time that has passed since I'm only on my 7th visit, but we were off for spring break. So she did pretty well on that. And then I talked to so in our classroom we have a special education teacher in our classroom because we have an inclusion classroom. There's 5 kids that are classified. So I talked to my special education teacher about the IEP process, and she basically gave me an overview of the whole special education department and special education process. She said it basically begins when a general education teacher refers a student to INRS, but when they refer the student, they have to have data that supports why they're referring the student to INRS, whether it's data related to academics or behavior issues. The people who make up the INRS are people like the principal, like the speech pathologist, the nurse. So at first, INRS might give the general education teacher interventions to help solve problems with the student so that the student doesn't need to go to the next step, which would be to go to the child study team. If the interventions don't work, then INRS will eventually refer the student to the child study team, and at that point, the child study team tests the student to see if the student is eligible to be classified for special education. And then the special education teacher also mentioned how if you wanted to add a service to your student's IEP, or if you're a parent and you want to add a service to even a teacher and you want to add a service to the student's IEP, you have to have another IEP meeting with the parents and the general education teacher, the special education teacher, and the principal or school psychologist or whoever else is involved in that child's current IEP. You have to meet with all of them in order just to add another service, whether it be speech or, something else along those lines. Let's see. She talked about how there is a strict protocol that you have to follow at Bridgeton and in their district. She did say a note from a doctor will allow the parents and the student to skip the protocol step and just go straight into being classified. If a student has autism and there's a note from their doctor who they see about autism, and there's a note from him and the note says that this child has autism, well, then they get to skip all the testing and can just go straight into special education. She also talked about response to intervention and how they pull kids out and try to, help them with whatever they need. She also mentioned how Bridgeton doesn't want to classify students and tries so hard not to classify them. She had said something about how there's either too many Hispanics or African Americans or Latinos that are classified. And it doesn't really make any sense because the majority of the population are either Hispanics, Latinos, or African Americans. But because of that, because they're being penalized by the state, they want to get their classification numbers down. So Bridgeton really tries to stray away from classifying students. She also said that the discrepancy between the IQ and your performance level is how they determine if you're classified. And she said what's interesting is that the discrepancy between the two and what determines if you're classified or not classified is actually determined by the district. So it can be different between each district, which is very interesting. So Bridgeton's gap is very, very large because they don't want to classify students. And then she also said that the movement in education right now is to move all of the kids into regular ed classrooms and, include them into regular education classrooms and have all inclusion classrooms, and then have the general education teachers make the accommodations and modifications for those students, which in an ideal world I think would be perfect and nice, but it's not working. It's too much stress. It's too much, even just in a kindergarten class of 15 students, there's 5 classified kids in there with a special education teacher, a regular ed teacher, a student teacher, and an aide, and it's still a lot. So that's pretty much what I learned about the IEP process and kind of special education in general. I look forward to my last visit in 2 weeks, and I will wrap everything up then.